Three things must be present at the same time to produce fire. Number one, enough oxygen to sustain combustion. Number two, enough heat to reach ignition temperature. And number three, some fuel or combustible material. Together, they produce the chemical reaction that is fire. Take away any of these things, and the fire will be out. There is no more fire. Dear friends and fellows, today we are going to discuss the fire risk assessment process or the procedure. What elements are factors to be considered during preparation of fire risk assessment. I'm your host, Javed, and you are watching Safety First. If you are new on this channel, kindly subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. And if you find the video informative, then like, comment, and share. Let us discuss what is fire risk assessment. The process of identifying fire hazards and evaluating the level of risk, including to whom and how many are affected arising from the hazards, taking into account any existing risk control measures. What is fire risk control? Workplace precautions, for example, sprinkler systems within a building, fire alarm and detection system, fire emergency plans, procedures, work permit systems, and portable firefighting equipment. All these are the different forms or examples of fire risk controls. Do you know what is risk control system? The arrangements that ensure fire risk controls means workplace precautions are implemented and maintained. For example, the provision for ensuring that an adequate level of supervision is maintained during hot work or refueling processes, or a system for planned preventive maintenance for fire safety systems, emergency lighting, fire doors, etc., and establishing a program of fire safety inspections for buildings, sites, and workplaces. Dear friends and fellows, let us discuss the 5 steps. Step number one, look for the hazards. Step number two, decide who might be harmed and how. Step number three, evaluate the risks and decide whether the existing precautions are adequate or whether more should be done. Step number four, record your findings. And step number five, review your assessment and revise if necessary. Let us explain these steps one by one. Number one, identify fire hazards. In the fire hazards, you have to identify the sources of ignition, sources of fuel, and the sources of oxygen. In step number two, identify people at risk, people in and around the premises or the building, and the other people who are at risk. Step number three, evaluate, remove, reduce, and protect from risk. Evaluate the risk of a fire occurring. Evaluate the risk to people from fire. Remove or reduce fire hazards. Remove or reduce the risk to the people. Detection and warning, firefighting, escape routes, lighting, signs and notices, and the maintenance of firefighting or fire prevention installations of the equipment. Step number four, record, plan, inform, instruct, and train. Record significant finding and action taken. Prepare an emergency plan. inform and instruct relevant people, cooperate and coordinate with others, and provide training. And number five, review. Keep assessment under review and revise where necessary. Dear friends and fellows, you are watching Safety First, and today we are discussing fire risk assessment process. Now, let us understand the practical steps while preparing a fire risk assessment. The fire risk assessor or fire risk assessment team will benefit from having a range of documentation readily available prior to, during, and following the practical risk assessment process. Visual observation, verbal information gathering, etc. The range of documentation that may provide key information for the fire risk assessment process is likely to include fire safety policy document or health and safety policy, fire certificate if building was previously certified by fire service or HSC, enforcement letters or notices, history of any fires in premises, history of building changes, building regulations applications, plans for all buildings and plan of site, construction health and safety file, schematic diagrams of fire safety systems. For example, emergency lighting, fire alarm detection systems, etc. Building materials, maintenance, inspection, testing, cleaning arrangements for building services such as fire safety systems, fire doors, etc. Operations and maintenance, records of storage, types and amounts of flammable materials, details of staff, cost training, use, handling and storage of flammable substances, electrical and gas supply system record, portable electrical appliance test record, details of number of employees and others who may be on site, details of employees and others who may have any sensory or physical impairment, details of staff fire safety training, details of evacuation exercises. This may be included in the fire log book. Do you know what might be the possible contents of fire logbook? Fire logbook shall include extinguisher test records, emergency lighting test records, fire alarm and detection test records, sprinkler maintenance records if fitted to the building, dry riser or other fixed firefighting systems record, door holding device test records, smoke extract or pressurized system test records, and generator test records, standard operating procedures for any hot work processes, hot work permits, maintenance records, gas units, plant tools and equipment, and other risk assessments that include fire-related issues. All these elements must be the part of fire logbook. Dear friends and fellows, a large proportion of the discussed documentation may be available in the form of a fire safety manual that may have been produced as part of compliance with the British Standard BS 5588-12 of 2004, Managing Fire Safety. The risk assessor or assessment team is also likely to require access to key personnel who will have an in-depth knowledge of the facility and activities that are likely to go on within the premises. Such key players may be departmental or employers representative, property or building services manager or representative, facilities manager or supervisor, health and safety advisor, fire safety manager or advisor, landlord's representative, members of the fire safety team, fire safety coordinator, fire warden or fire marshal, personnel or human resources for training information, members of the janitorial team, and maintenance or electrical engineers if in-house. Let us discuss now how to manage fire hazards. This section of training presentation will give a brief overview how you can manage with the legal and contractual agreements and include as a minimum policy and procedures, roles and responsibilities, training, inspection and monitoring systems, and emergency planning arrangements. The majority of fire hazards that affect a building or its operations arise out of substandard management arrangements. For example, when investigating accidents, incidents, fires, false alarms, etc., management failures are seen to have a significant effect upon whether unsafe conditions or unsafe acts occur. There are very few occasions where both primary and secondary fire hazards arise which are not attributable to management failures, and therefore this is a key issue when analyzing fire risk. Dear friends and fellows, let us discuss the primary and secondary hazards of fire. The primary hazards of fire are ignition sources, fuel sources, and oxygen sources, while the secondary hazards, those prevent an adequate response in the event of a fire, are rapid fire and smoke spread, spreading to adjacent properties, inadequate warning arrangements, inadequate means of escape, persons cannot be accounted for, small fire grows rapidly, untrained persons at risk, fire service unaware of fire service unaware of building risks, fire service cannot gain access to the building, and future construction or maintenance works. In relation to secondary hazards associated with fire, few more risks may also need to be considered. Slips, trips, and falls while evacuating, handling, lifting or carrying portable firefighting equipment, being trapped by a structural failure such as a wall collapsing, being asphyxiated by a gas flood system that operates to extinguish a fire, coming into contact with the release of harmful substances such as asbestos, being exposed to fire or explosion while undertaking firefighting action, coming into contact with live electrical equipment due to degradation of wiring during a fire, coming into contact with moving machinery while trying to shut down in the event of an emergency, being struck by a moving vehicle while evacuating, and being assaulted by a person panicking in the event of a fire. Do you know the groups and persons those are at risk in the event of a fire? To ensure that the risk assessment record meets the required standards, it must identify the persons or groups of persons who may be at risk, particularly as a number of control measures may be specific to these group of people. For example, hearing impaired person will need to be provided with an alternative to an audible warning device. Such groups of people may include those directly involved with the work within a facility, who may be working in a remote area such as a tank or vessel that could be difficult to evacuate, from contractors working on plant under noisy conditions such as air conditioning units in a roof plant room, who may not hear the alarm. Visitors, including those using meeting rooms who may be unfamiliar with the fire safety management or escape routes. Members of the public, particularly in large places of assembly, such as shopping centers, who may have no knowledge of where to go and what to do in the event of an emergency. Young persons and children and their parents or guardians who may attempt to find them if they are separated. Those with physical impairment or sensory impairment that may prevent awareness or response due to their condition. It should also be noted that such conditions may be temporary, as in the case of a broken leg. Pregnant or nursing mothers who may be more susceptible to physical or mental stresses that could be affected by the need to undertake an emergency evacuation. Dear friends and fellows, it is important that the emergency plans for buildings take account of disabled people, ensure that there are reasonable arrangements not only for access and use, but also for egress in the case of an emergency. Arrangements will need to be considered for persons whose escape from fire may be made more difficult on the basis of following factors: aged, less able bodied, of impaired mobility, wheelchair users, impaired vision, impaired hearing, and learning difficulties or mental illness. When undertaking an assessment of the needs of disabled persons during an emergency evacuation, it will be helpful to consider the questions such as: is there a need to locate disabled workers to parts of the building where they can leave the building more easily? Is any special equipment needed, such as an evacuation chair? Are storage areas provided with any necessary evacuation equipment? Are they easy to access? In the event of emergencies, are specific members of staff designated to alert and assist disabled persons? Evacuation assistance? Are visual or vibrating alerting devices provided to supplement audible alarms? Are visual alarms installed in all areas, including toilet facilities? Do routes and procedures take account of the potentially slower movement of people with disabilities? Are all disabled people familiar with escape routes and provided with instructions and training in safety procedures? Are areas of and locations that are safe from immediate danger established? Are arrangements for people with disabilities included in the written evacuation procedures? Are arrangements periodically reviewed? Are employees encouraged to make a list of medications, allergies, special equipment, names, addresses, and telephone numbers of doctors, pharmacies, family members, and friends, and any other important information? You have to answer all these questions to make a suitable and sufficient fire risk assessment. If you will bypass or neglect these questions, the fire safety risk assessment shall never be considered as complete and authentic, effective, and workable in real emergency scenarios. Dear friends and fellows, in order to ensure that the emergency evacuation plans for disabled people are effective at the time they are required, it will be necessary to provide training for any staff who act as evacuation assistants. Training should include evacuation techniques to use, particularly how to carry or assist individuals who use mobility aids, the use of any special evacuation equipment, and training in basic sign language to effectively communicate with individuals who are deaf, and the instructions for individuals who use assistance animals. When developing emergency plans for disabled people, it will be useful to obtain advice from the local fire service periodically about such issues as whether people with disabilities should remain in their workplaces, assemble in an area of refuge to await the arrival of rescue workers, or immediately evacuate. All of us know fire is potentially dangerous. It can kill hundreds of thousands in a few minutes. That's why fire risk assessment is mandatory. It is not a routine matter activity. Fire risk assessment should be prepared as per the steps mentioned in the presentation. Otherwise, maybe the fire risk assessment is there, but it will not be able to protect people from harm and to protect the premises or the properties from destruction or danger. And that's it. Training session related to fire risk assessment is over now. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and share the video. Hope to see you soon with a new HSC tutorial. Till then, take care, good luck, and Allah Hafiz. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year.